We've had 15 of these corrections over the past 12 years. And this current one is an average one, nothing special. Number two, it always shakes out the weak hands. So like a Jim Cramer that you mentioned has lettuce hands or weak hands. He never did the research. He never talked about the technology. He was in and out. He's a trader. He's a hedge fund guy. He's not a serious money manager by any respect. Meanwhile, Paul Tudor Jones came out and said, I'm upping my allocation from 1% to 5%. Paul Tudor Jones is a very successful, multi-decade successful career hedge fund money manager titan. Jim Cramer is an entertainer on CNBC who, if you look at all his buys and sells over 15 years, you'd come out exactly dead even. He's never made anyone a nickel. So there's a big difference there. Number two, the hodling a security is always difficult. You know, I remember when I was buying Apple stock in the late 90s when it had crashed and Steve Jobs just came back into the company. People were dead set against Apple. They hated Apple. Turned out to be a good investment. When was a good time to sell Amazon stock? You know, never. Even though it's went through some 60, 70% corrections throughout its ascent now to being one of the most valuable companies in the world, right? So volatility in Bitcoin is something we want because it's a trade-off we accept. Because holding fiat money means you have stability, but you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. Holding Bitcoin is volatile, but you're guaranteed to increase purchasing power. Guaranteed. A word you rarely see in the investment world. And I was a fiduciary and a money manager and a stockbroker on Wall Street for many, many years. Very rare, never do use the word guaranteed, but I can, in this sense, tell you, you have a guaranteed rise in purchasing power with Bitcoin, and you do accept some volatility for that. But at a 200% annualized rate of return for 10 years, I'm willing to accept a little volatility. Anybody who's shaken out now, that happens all the time. I mean, those are markets. People, they pop in, they pop out. They don't do their research. They don't know why they own it to begin with. They end up dumping it, then they buy it back. Look at China. China's actually getting out of the Bitcoin business right at probably the best time to get into the Bitcoin business, but that's okay because El Salvador, Paraguay, Guatemala, Mexico, they're going to get into the Bitcoin business. Texas is going to get into the Bitcoin business. Texas is going to inherit all that mining from China. All those rigs went to Kazakhstan and Texas. And that's the way this distributed monetary network works. You know, it only goes to people who are A, smart, two, have values, have ethics.
You have this big, bold forecast of 220,000.
Yeah.
You were hoping for November. Have you since adjusted?
No. I saw the same thing in 2013 and again in another period where you had a 5, 6, 7x move in a compressed amount of time. So I still have that target. You know, the fundamentals that apply to Bitcoin are only getting stronger. And people are, I think, not pricing in this news about sovereign states making Bitcoin legal tender. I mean, this is the first... You know, Bitcoin separates state from money. You know, in the case of El Salvador, it'll be running parallel with the dollar, but the individuals have the right to take control of their own private keys. It's outside of the state's control. Same thing everywhere. And the government makes a good point. They're saying, why should we be in the business of the central bank business? We can outsource that to Bitcoin, and we can use geothermal, which is free and ecologically sound. And we can do other stuff with our time as a government. Government shouldn't be wasting their time trying to monkey around with monetary policy. It's a complete waste of government's time. Just outsource your monetary policy to Bitcoin and work on something else. Build roads, take out trash, do something that governments are good at. You know, don't focus on monetary policy. Governments are horrible at monetary policy. At this point, there's no difference between the United States and the Soviet Union in terms of monetary policy right now. You have a Politburo of decision makers making horrible decisions based on price signals that are concocted out of horrible feedback, out of horrible price signals, and they're both going to go the exact same way, into the trash bin of history, because they have no monetary policy, because they're run by kleptocrats and geriatric senile old idiots, and they're just going to die on the vine. And these countries run by young, enterprising entrepreneurs like El Salvador and others are going to be like, we'll take it. We'll run the world. Thank you very much. And Bitcoin is our standard.
And you had forecasted that a few years back, that we would see this wave. But what's interesting about the countries that are adopting, you're saying they're led by younger entrepreneurial people. I mean, would you, who do you think we could see next in terms of those countries? I mean, they all seem to be centralized in the same area. Is
Right.
that not
It's
interesting?
no mistake. After the Monroe Doctrine and the U.S. turning the southern states, the Latin America and
Right.
Central America, into a slave labor market and cheap commodities using the dollar. Read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Washington, D.C., the CIA would send guys down there and load them up with debt. And if you don't pay the debt, we'll throw you out of an airplane. That's been America's foreign policy in the region for decades. Now these countries are saying, hey, you know what? I think we'll opt out. Thank you very much, but we don't need you, because now we have Bitcoin, as I predicted and a few others predicted. The whole question was never, when will governments ban Bitcoin? The whole question is, which governments will start to adopt Bitcoin, and you get into this hash war. You get into competitive government acquisition mode. Like, we need as much Bitcoin as possible. You see the New York, they're having a mayoral race right now. The guy who's leading the race said, oh, to heck with Miami, because Miami has declared itself the Bitcoin capital of America under its mayor, is saying, we're going to be the Bitcoin capital of America. New York City is going to be the Bitcoin capital of America, according to the mayoral candidate. He just came out with that this week, right? So that's what I've been saying is going to happen. There's going to be competition to get the most Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin, and get the most businesses, Bitcoin businesses. That's what we're going to see happening. It's called game theory. It's baked into the protocol since day one, and now it's playing out on the sovereign level, as we predicted for many years. So there's not going to be any banning of Bitcoin. There's going to be those countries that are smart enough to get in now and reap the benefits, and then those countries that'll wait and be,
Yeah.
suffering.